Before we get started, guys, if you want to pick up a gauge or gauge combo like we have going in here, check out the link below and get yours today. What's going on, guys? Kevin with MA Performance here. Today we are back with the ultimate Evo 10 behind me, and we're going to be installing a couple of gauges. AEM was kind enough to hook us up with a gauge combo that is going to be their AFR gauge, oil pressure gauge, and boost gauge. Now, of course, being that this is the ultimate Evo 10, we wanted to have the best gauges going into the car, which is why we went with AEM's X-Series gauges. Not only do they make it really simple with their 3-gauge combo, probably some of the most important gauges you can have in the car, and we'll cover that in just a minute, but also X-Series in general is their proprietary technology that is patented by AEM and has some of the fastest response times, and that's independent tested, out of all of the gauges on the market. So we want to make sure that we're able to see and monitor everything that's going on in the car in real time. Not only is that going to ensure that your engine stays healthy while you're driving it, but also when it comes time to tune the car, your tuner is going to be very happy that you have something in there that can keep up with it.
Hello, it is I, Gauge Daddy. So today, our friends over at AEM, friends, t-shirt givers, were kind enough to send us a couple of gauges to put on the Evo 10. So we're gonna go ahead and get those installed. Got a 2-pillar pod set up here and then a single right by the steering wheel. So we're gonna do all that. We're gonna show you wiring all that up and do a little bit of explaining on some of the efficient ways to get this all done and make it look all nice.
So the first gauge that we're going to be installing is going to be the AFR gauge. The air-fuel ratio gauge is going to be super important to make sure that your engine is not running too lean, running too rich. Obviously, in either of those scenarios can cause a lot of issues. You want to make sure that you're running at that optimal air-fuel ratio and you don't have any engines blowing up on you, all right? You just installed all those new parts. You want to ensure that you're running properly. So you can see this one that we have out here. You have the nice gauge. Of course, all of the AEM gauges are going to be super thin, so they can be mounted just about anywhere. And they also do come with a 12-month manufacturer's warranty from AEM, and that does cover the sensor as well. I know all of you guys have seen the video already if you purchased one, but just a quick recap, want to make sure that you're being cautious with the sensor until it is time to actually install it.
Okay, so right now, went ahead and put all the gauges inside their respective pods. Obviously, this is a dual pod pillar gauge setup. We also have another one that's going on top of the steering column that was actually here previously, and it just so happens that it works out perfectly. Got 2 here, 1 here, kind of spreads it out a little bit, get all the gauges in your peripherals. So we mounted them boost gauge, oil pressure, and then the wideband AFR gauge will be on this side. Did a little bit of back and forth on how we wanted to route some of the wiring. Essentially, there's 2 plugs in the frame that kind of run along the side here. That's why I've got this all torn out, and that's actually where I'm running the 2 connections for these 2 sensors. Through there, there's a plug on the inside of the car, and then there's a plug on the inside of the fender well, and then you can kind of run it up alongside the driver fender. And then for the wideband, it's actually super simple. The factory rear O2 sensor has a connection on the inside of the car, and you can just follow that exact connection into the car with your aftermarket wideband. So it makes it super simple. You just kind of have to pull off some panels and the carpet on the passenger side. Luckily, at this point, that's already been done, so it's just as easy as connecting the gauge and calling it good. But it is a relatively simple thing to do, and all you have to do is follow the factory rear O2 sensor connection, and you'll essentially be in the exact spot you want to be. Now we're just going to kind of tidy things up, plug it in, and then we'll get into the actual wiring, the power, and the ground for all these sensors so it'll power on.
Boost gauge really important when it comes time to tuning the vehicle. That tuner is going to need to know exactly where you're at as far as boost pressure goes. Of course, it's always good for flexing to your friends as well. Some vehicles have them installed from the factory, but we need something that's a little bit more accurate, being that this is, again, the ultimate Evo 10. So when it comes to the boost gauge, again, not only is it important to know exactly what kind of boost you're making, but when it comes time to actually driving the vehicle, you can ensure that you're actually hitting the correct amount of boost, and running too little a boost may cause some issues. So you want to make sure that you're running proper. Boost gauge will tell you that exactly. It's also going to make sure that you're not over boosting and blowing a piston straight out of the bottom of the block. This next one is near and dear to my heart because I've blown a couple of engines up because of oil pressure. So of course, Tiny is going to be installing an oil pressure gauge. We want to know exactly where that oil pressure is at all times. Now this is especially true on any sort of modified engine, whether that's a built block or just bolt-ons, but we need to know exactly where that oil pressure is at all times. Can help tell you if there's any issues going on with the engine. Again, making sure that you're not going to blow a piston out of the bottom of the block. I've done that a couple of times. Don't ask me, it's not a lot of fun.
So get yourself a little bit of double stick tape in here. Hold it up for a nice clean look. And that way, if you ever decide to take it out, it comes out with ease and no mess. It's our problem-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata. So, got this bad mamma jamma installed. Like I said earlier, like you guys have probably seen on the other videos, there was a wideband over here. We're gonna keep utilizing this because it makes sense and it works. So, we got our X-line wideband air fuel ratio gauge. Gonna get this all tightened up, and then I got my wires all run, and then all we will have to do is wire and power and ground, and we'll be good to go. And I'll show you guys an easy way to do that just in a second here. Okay, so I promised you that I would show you the easy way to do this, to add some power. So I told you guys I'd show you the easy way to do this to make your life simple. You can obviously get really crazy when it comes to even the power and grounds for these kits, however you want to go about it. Simple way to do it that's safe and effective is using what's called an add-a-fuse. And essentially what it does is it takes the place of a existing power on your fuse panel and maintains that fuse, but then also adds another circuit in parallel on top of it. That way you have a completely fused system, but it's also just a really easy way to not have to cut into any of your factory wiring and modify that. So anytime you can do that, that's a major plus. Obviously you can kind of get the same thing done if you built your own power and ground distribution block or anything of the sort if you guys are crafty, but this is just a good way to do it. That way you keep a fused system, but it's also really easy to remove and it's not invasive on your factory electronics, which is always good. So we've got the power end, got a ground eyelet that there's a bunch of different places to ground it underneath the chassis. And essentially what we're gonna do is use the included butt crimps that come with these kits and tie them all together and then get them all set up. With the oil pressure gauge, we had to extend the wiring a little bit to make it all the way to the front of the engine. That's where the best spot to add a oil pressure sensor was. So just be aware that you do have to get a little bit crafty with these sometimes because they are a universal part, which does mean sometimes you have to modify some things to make it work. But at the end of the day, it's a great product and they work great. So 10 out of 10 I would recommend. Shout out to AEM. So gonna get back to doing this and yeah. So as you can see, all three powers are in there. Take your little crimp tool. Yeah, make sure we're good. Add your add-a-fuse to the other end. Give her a little pull, make sure she's not going anywhere. And obviously this looks like super hectic right now, but this is, believe it or not, a pretty easy job to clean up and tuck away. So once we get the grounds done and everything set up, we'll do that. But it does look like a big spaghetti monster right now. But yeah, we're just kind of grabbing all the ends and more or less creating a loop that we can zip tie together to kind of shorten it all up, and then we'll find a nice spot to tuck it and then zip tie it in place. Because what build isn't complete without a few zip ties keeping us all together? You know, I'm convinced that the inner workings of our body probably has a couple of zip ties just to keep us in check.
I hear 'em chatting the noise, move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear 'em chat with the boys, man so tough, but mans keep walking. Just too sharp with the prize, white girls let it tell me I'm awesome, yeah. Hot like fire on the pan, if you wanna touch man, please use caution.
So as you guys can kind of tell, we're all wrapped up with the install here of our AEM X-Series gauges. Just kind of wanted to do a quick product showcase of these awesome gauges that AEM sent over to us for the Evo build. Honestly, these are some of the best gauges on the market. I really enjoy the way that they look, their interchangeability as far as the face and the bezel colors. You can go from a black to a silver or white. Also, another great feature about these gauges is the min-max peak and the min-max warning feature. The warning feature is super awesome to me because you're able to set on the fly what you want all of these warning parameters to be, and it'll flash at you when you exceed or are below whatever you set those warnings to. It's just another cool feature that are a part of these gauges, and extra fail-safe for you to know that everything's in check. It's really easy to be out ripping around and you know the gauges are there, but you're not really paying attention. And when you start to see them flash like they do when they reach the warning, it grabs your eye right away and lets you know that something's up.
All right, guys, so there you have it. We got all these 3 gauges wrapped up and in our Ultimate Evo 10. Again, huge shout out to AEM. Thank you guys so much for hooking us up with these awesome X-Series gauges. Again, some of the fastest out there, actually the fastest out there. Again, they have a 12-month warranty, including the sensor, and they do have data logging capabilities if you guys need those. So if you guys have any questions or want to get any of these things that you've seen in this video, check us out online, give us a call or shoot us an email. We'll be happy to help you out, and stay tuned as we continue our Ultimate Evo 10 build, and keep an eye out for our Type R series as well.